Idaho's economy is heavily reliant upon agriculture, but the ag industry involves more than just the dairy producers and ranchers and farmers. It requires supporting industries like packaging and transportation and large animal veterinarians. But what happens if there aren't enough vets to take care of the livestock? Producer Ruth Brown looked into how Idaho's veterinarian shortage impacts ranchers and the state's economy.
Idaho is home to more cattle than there are people. An estimated 2.5 million cattle live in Idaho, many of which are being raised for beef and dairy production, a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's another 235,000 head of sheep and lamb in the state, according to the USDA. Those numbers don't include the many other large animals being raised in the state. All of those animals will need veterinary care at some point. Idaho does not, however, have a veterinary school.
So some of the challenges that the livestock producers in Idaho, livestock producers anywhere in the United States face are there are certain either tests, documents that can only be issued by an accredited and licensed veterinarian. An example of that is a health certificate. So if you're participating in commerce, whether you're a dairy or a beef operation, you have to have a certificate of veterinary inspection, otherwise known as a health certificate, signed by a veterinarian before those shipment of animals will leave the state. So only an accredited veterinarian can sign that.
Other needs include mandatory vaccinations for cattle and emergency situations. This summer, Idaho Reports visited Lufkin Cattle Company, a seed stock producer in the Salmon area, to talk about their veterinary needs. Carl Lufkin's ranch has roughly 625 head of cattle and horses.
We raise registered Angus cattle and we sell registered Angus bulls, and they require a lot more veterinarian work, mostly fertility work. And so we probably use a veterinarian twice as much as a normal rancher would use one. There's 2 veterinarians in town that have clinics that are primarily small animal veterinarians, and there's 2 others that have vet trucks and work out of their trucks and travel around to the ranches to do. And all of them are capable of doing large animal work, but primarily 2 that are actively, all their work is large animal.
That's 2 large animal vets for roughly 26,500 cows in Lemhi County, according to the USDA's count. The number of active large animal veterinarians in Idaho isn't as easy to pin down as one might think.
So total from the Board of Veterinary Medicine, there's roughly around 900 licensed veterinarians throughout the state. So that may sound like a pretty decent number. In actuality, those are all across the entire spectrum of small animal, large animal, exotic, government, research, industry, professors, all those are represented there. And there's nowhere that I had to report that I was transitioning from a large animal veterinarian to a government veterinarian, and most veterinarians are that way. And it's not just, it doesn't mean that all those veterinarians offer the same services, and how an individual like a livestock producer knows where to go if they move here or they're scaling up their operation. It's a lot of times it's very hard to find a veterinarian who provides the services that you need.
Many of those vets are aging. Of the top 50 producing vets, 10% of them are over the age of 70 and 16% of them are over the age of 60, according to Libesley. Additionally, large animal medicine is very labor intensive, so some vets move to small animal medicine as they age. Large animal vets are often on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
But I've had instances when they're gone to they're out of town for some various thing, and you can't get somebody. And have loaded animals and hauled them to Idaho Falls, which is a 3-hour drive basically in the winter. So you just do what you have to do. But typically, we have a veterinarian that can be here within. You get a phone call, he'll be here within 30 minutes. Here, not all of Idaho's that way. I think there's areas where a veterinarian is, the nearest one is just 3 hours away.
I talked to an active dairyman a year or 2 ago. He had a calving, very complicated calving, and he couldn't get a veterinarian to come out. And that's an active grade A dairy right now that's shipping milk on a daily basis, and that's heartbreaking to me to hear that he couldn't get a veterinarian to come out on an emergency basis, because more than likely they were fully scheduled for that day, and you know, if they had to pull away from their regularly scheduled appointment, you know, when are we going to cover that? And so it is a huge problem trying to get emergency services in addition to the regular services that a veterinarian has to cover for a large animal operation like beef or dairy.
There's also an economic advantage to having veterinary support in the state.
The number one economic business in Idaho is the dairy business. Number two is the beef business. Most people think we're about potatoes, but dairy and beef are two biggest economic drivers in the state of Idaho. And we need to feed the world, you know. So veterinarians are a critical part of two of the biggest economic drivers in the state of Idaho.
The state did pass a resolution encouraging the State Board of Education to ask Utah State to accept more Idaho students. The State Board of Education told Idaho Reports that Utah State University is willing to enter into an agreement like the one Idaho has with Washington State, and they plan to report back to the legislature early next year. Legislators must determine the next steps in moving forward. Idaho has an existing partnership with Washington State guaranteeing 11 slots into the veterinary college for Idaho students, but usually only about 10% of veterinary students want to become large animal vets. There are financial hurdles too.
The average student debt is $200,000 or more. If you get an in-state educational opportunity, if you're out of state, the AVMA numbers show it's north of $250,000. So that is not an insignificant amount of student debt for a veterinarian. Now, if you're having to practice in a rural part of the state, and if you are a large animal veterinarian, you have to go to the customer. The customer can't bring their herd of cattle to you. And so just from a time aspect, you have windshield time, you're driving from one appointment to the next. You only can see 3, 4, 5 appointments in a day. Conversely, if you're a small animal veterinarian, people bring their pets to you and you can see 30 or 40 appointments a day. The earning power, by definition, of small animal vets compared to large animal vets is significantly different.
The state is working on incentives through the USDA's Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Plan to help with some of the cost.
In recent years, Idaho has been very successful. So we've had several awards given each year over the past several years to Idaho vets that have demonstrated they have student debt. And if they continue to practice a certain level of large animal medicine, production animal medicine in underserved counties designated by the state veterinarian, I say we really need vets here. So if you're willing to practice here and focus on this species that needs veterinary support for 3 years, they can get up to $75,000. I would love to see a more large animal focused educational opportunity out there for Idaho residents. And whether that's through the existing educational curriculums out there, partnering with more schools, veterinary schools out there, I think those are all part of the formula that may solve this issue, another leg of the stool.